بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. قال تعالى: ومن أحسن قولا ممن دعا إلى الله وعمل صالحا وقال إنني من المسلمين. وقال صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم: من يريد الله به خيرا يفقهه في الدين. وقال أيضا: طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم. وبعد. So as we continue this series of classes about the way we practice our worship or the way we do our worship, we are still in the book of Tahara. We started at the start talking about the signs of puberty or maturity or the age of responsibility. Then we talked a little bit about the masail or points concerning the water, the way the different kinds or types of water according to the Sharia. Then we talked about wudu, the things that nullify the wudu. Then we talked about the things that are a must, the things that are haram when one has no wudu. Then we talked about the steps, how to do wudu. Then after that, we started talking about the ghusl. We are still talking about some of the masail or that are related to the ghusl in real sense, because in this class we are going to talk about the things that are haram for a woman during her periods. The things that are haram for a woman during her periods. Now, so we talked about ghusl, the things that make the ghusl become wajib, become a must. Then the arkan, the pillars of ghusl. Then the things that are haram for a junub, for a person who has janaba. I think now the meaning of janaba I think is clear. But the person who has janaba, there are things that are haram. We added two more things to the things that are haram for the person that has no wudu. So right now, or today's class, we're going to focus, inshallah ta'ala, bitawfiqihi, on the things that are haram for a woman during her periods. A woman experiencing her periods, there are things that are haram. What are they? The ulama tell us there are about 10 to 11 things, difference of counting, but the things are the same, inshallah. 4 things, or we'll say 6 of the things that we mentioned. The 6 things, not 6 of the things, but the 6 things that we've mentioned that are haram for the person who has janaba, they are also haram for the woman during her periods. The things that are haram for a person with janaba, they are also haram for a woman that is experiencing her menstrual periods. In the hadith that we've mentioned, لا يقرأ القرآن الجنب ولا الحائض. لا يقرأ الجنب ولا الحائض شيئا من القرآن. The one who has janaba or the woman who has haid should not read anything from the Quran. Okay, as we know, there is a very famous difference of opinion amongst the scholars considering the woman. The madhab, the correct position of the Shafi'i madhab is that a woman should not, it is prohibited for her to read the Quran during her periods. It is prohibited. But some people may ask, but sometimes the periods take 7 days, 8, 9, some up to 15 days. And maybe the woman wants to revise. She is a hafidha. She wants to revise. How is it? She might forget. There are very many, okay, we'll say simply what we've said. It is haram for her to pronounce the letters. But if she just looks at the mushaf with her eyes and maybe does her revision with her eyes, it is okay and it's not haram. We've mentioned that. We mentioned that when we were talking about the junub in the last class. Also, some of the ulama have given a very a very small window that if it is at the most necessary, at the utmost necessary, Maybe she's the only teacher. There is no other teacher. She is the only person who can teach maybe. she can teach. If she's the only one that can teach, she can teach. But as we said, this is not according to our madhab. The Shafi'i madhab, the woman must not read the Quran. And one may ask, why is it all that and all that, and why all this? We have to know something. These are Allah's rulings. So according to the Shafi'i madhab, when a woman avoids reading the Quran, this is when she gets thawab. So she gets reward for avoiding this, because it is what Allah has ordered us to do. Twafaa tujue. Avoiding reading the Quran is ibadah during this time. The ibadah is avoidance of reading the Quran. Naam. As we said, we are going to talk about the Shafi'i madhab. There are differences of opinion, tab'an. Some scholars have allowed it, but according to the proofs that the Shafi'i madhab or the ulama of the Shafi'i madhab have read and understood or researched, we found they arrived at a conclusion that it is haram. Now, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. As for the things that are more, that are extra, we said that the 6 things that are haram for a junub, as-salah. Salah is haram for the woman. Hayd, not hayd, afwan. Salah is haram. Then tawaf. The 3rd thing, touching the mushaf. The 4th thing, carrying the mushaf. The 5th thing, staying in the masjid. The 6th thing, reading of the Quran. These 6 things are haram. They are prohibited. There are more things that are also haram for the woman during her periods. The first one is as-sawm. فَيَحْرُمُ الصَّوْمُ. It is haram for a woman to fast either during Ramadan or any time. It is haram for her to fast. It is prohibited for a woman to fast during her periods. And what do we mean fasting? What we mean by fasting is avoiding eating, drinking, and the things that break the fast, if she avoids these things with the intention of fasting. If she avoids these things with the intention of fasting, that is when she is a sinner. This is what's prohibited. Kama mwanamke atajizuia, hatokula, hatokunywa, kwa nia, kwa kukusudia kufunga, wakati huu ndio haramu. But if she hasn't intended anything, she's just amejizuia tu hali, the whole day hakula. Watu wengine hawakula kwa ajili ni Ramadhani. Yeye hakula kwa sababu hakusikia njaa, hakutaka kula. Not because anafunga. This is okay. This is not haram. This is not haram. So tutofautishe. Tuliposema saum, what is meant there is ajizuie kutokana na kula na kunywa kwa intention ya kufunga. If she does it just automatically, hajakusudia kufunga, basi no problem. Lakini something different between saum and salah. When a woman misses prayer because of salah, we said that she cannot pray. She does not repay. Halipi ile swala, haendi kuswali tena, haqidhi. Kwa lugha yetu Swahili tunasema haqidhi. Hafai kuqidhi ile swala. Haendi kuqidhi. Lakini as-saum, if she misses saum because of her menstrual periods, after Ramadan, she has to repay. She has to, anafaa kufunga zile saum, anafaa kuqidhi. She has to fast the number of days that she didn't fast during Ramadan. Naam. It was related from Sayyidatina Aisha. She said, "Kunna nu'maru biqada'i as-sawmi wa la nu'maru biqada'i as-salati." We were being ordered to repay the fast, yani tulipe, tuqidhi saum, lakini hatuamrishi kulipa nini? Kulipa swala ama kuqidhi swala, yani during their periods. That is, these are the words of Sayyidatina Aisha Mu'minin radiyallahu anha. So we know a woman 3, 4, 5, 7 days she had maybe during Ramadan, during yani periods zake zilikuwa maybe 7 days, 4 days, 5 days, she has to go and repay. Yani baada ya Ramadhani atalipa zile siku. Naam. So this is one of the extra things, vitu ambavyo vimezidi katika vitu ambavyo ni haramu kwa mwanamke ambaye yuko katika nini? Haid. The next thing that is haram is al-mubashara au mubasharat ma baina surrati war-rukba. Kugusana kwa mume na mke baina ya kitovu na magoti. Touching of whatever is between the navel and the knees. As we know, the husband and the wife, they have a right to pleasure each other with whatever is, yani anywhere. But during haid, during the menstrual periods, the man should not seek pleasure between the navel and the knees of the lady. Hafai kufanya vitendo au kucheza baina ya mume na mke, hawafai kucheza au kugusana baina ya kitovu na nini na magoti. Allah Ta'ala Jalla Jalalu says, fa'tazilu nisaa fil mahidhi, basi waepukeni, you should avoid the ladies, not avoid total avoidance like the Jews, no, but what is meant here, fa'tazilu nisaa fil mahidh, avoid them, i.e. sexual intercourse and touching with, or touching what is between the navel nanini and the knees. And also it has come that one of the Sahaba went to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asked the Prophet, Ya Rasulallah, O Prophet of Allah, what is permitted for us during the periods? Alimuuliza bwana mtume, ni vitu gani vinafaa tunaweza kufanya mwanamke au wake zetu wakiwa katika hedhi, wakiwa katika siku zao? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam said, laka ma fawqa al-izar, laka ma fawqa al-izar, yani you are permitted to do anything but above the izar. Izar ni kikoi, lakini ni vazi ambalo linavaliwa it is something, it's a cloth, wanaita loin cloth, kwa kizungu wanasema loin cloth, ambayo inavaliwa kwenye kitovu mpaka chini ya magoti. So when the Prophet said this, the scholars understood, and those are Arabs, they understood that it is halal to get pleasure or seek pleasure from the wife with anything that is above the navel and below the knees, because this cloth that has been mentioned, the cloth that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, ni vazi ambalo linavaliwa kutoka kwenye kitovu mpaka kwenye magoti. Tamam. So it is haram for a husband and a wife to play, to seek pleasure to pleasure each other with whatever is between the navel and knees. And it is one of the biggest sins to have sexual intercourse. That is even more. It is one of the biggest sins to have sexual intercourse during the menstrual periods. Ni katika madhambi makubwa. Ni katika madhambi makubwa, na mtu anapata dhambi kubwa sana sana sana. And it is even sunnah, if one does this, atoe sadaqa. In fact, some of the scholars have said that anyone who denies this prohibition, yani atakuja aseme about sexual intercourse only, atakuja aseme no, it is permitted to have intercourse during menstrual periods, some of the scholars have said huyu mtu anakuwa kafiri. Some of the scholars saying that. This is just to show us the magnitude of this sin, kuwa hizi ni katika, haya ni katika madhambi makubwa kabisa. Ndio maana Mwenyezi Mungu amesema fa'tazilu nisaa fil mahidh, basi waepukeni wanawake, yani katika matendo ya ndoa, waepukeni wanawake katika nini? Katika hedhi, during their menstrual periods. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. As for the next thing that is haram is at-talaq, divorce. Okay, of course this is not haram from the woman's perspective, from the lady's perspective. It is haram from the man. It is haram for the man to divorce his wife during her menstrual periods. Mwanamke akiwa katika period zake, ni haramu kwa mwanamume kumpa talaka. Lazima angoje. Hafai kumpa talaka mpaka angoje hedhi iishe. We are not going to go into details. We are not going to go into very much detail, but generally this is because siku zake za eda, the period that the woman will stay, eda yake, sisi tunasema ni eda yake, it will be longer if the man divorces her wife during her menstrual periods. So mwanamke, la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, mume akimtaliki yule mke, the period ambayo mwanamke atabaki katika eda inakuwa very long. So because of that, the Prophet prohibited us from divorcing our wives, or from one divorcing their wife during her menstrual periods. It is haram. It is haram because the idda will be long. Na yule mke atapata yani madhara, atadhurika. Naam. It happened that Sayyiduna Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he divorced his wife. Once he divorced his wife during the menstrual periods, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them, murhu falyuraji'aha, yani order him, amrudie yule mkewe. He was ordered to amrudie yule mkewe. It is sunnah kwa mwenye kumwacha mke wake during periods, ni sunnah amrudilie. Tamam. So we have to be careful. First thing we have to know, it is haram to divorce the wife during her menstrual periods. That's first. Second thing is that it is sunnah to go back. Umrudie, ni sunnah umrudilie yule mkeo. And another thing is that mtu akimwacha mke during this period, talaka inapita. Because some people think because it's prohibited, so si uzur, yani talaka haipiti, talaka haiswihi. La, bal, when one divorces his wife during her menstrual periods, the talaq is valid. Tunahisabu kuwa talaka ishapita. Kwa hiyo lazima akimtaka amrudie. Si ati tuseme la, because he's divorced her during her periods, then the divorce is not valid. No, it is valid. And that's why the Prophet, what did the Prophet say? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, murhu falyurajiha, muamrisheni amrudie. Mbona amrudie ikiwa hajamwacha? So the ulama have understood from this is a very long hadith, in real sense this is a very long hadith, but they understood from this that the talaq is valid, the divorce is valid. So the person has to go has to know that sasa badala ya talaka 3 imepungua, imekuwa ni 2. Naam. Except there is a scenario that it's not haram. Divorcing the woman generally during her periods is haram, except if the woman herself atatoa pesa anunue talaka. Because as we know, most of the people have to study these things, because there are things that happen in our societies. Kuna talaka inaitwa khul'. Kwa kifupi, the woman can buy the talaq. She can tell the man, I'm going to give you a certain amount of money, please give me my divorce, I want to be divorced. If this happens, it is allowed for the man to divorce the woman during her periods. Because if the woman is ameridhia, she's content mpaka inafika point atoe pesa yeye mwenyewe ndo aachwe, in this scenario inaruhusiwa, yule mume anaweza kumwacha, and there is hakuna uharamu. Naam. As for the next thing that is haram, this will be, I think, the third thing that we've added, or the fourth, because we've added sawm and seeking pleasures with whatever is between the navel and the knees. Then the third thing ni divorce. The fourth thing is al-murur fil masjidi in khafat talwithahu. Walking past the masjid. Mtu kupita kwenye msikiti. Yule mwanamke ni haramu apite kwenye msikiti akidhania kuwa atanajisi msikiti. If she's afraid, maybe if I go through the masjid nitachafua msikiti, basi it is haram. It is haram for her to walk through the masjid. Originally, kihakika si haramu kwa yeye kupita. It's not haram. If maybe she will get through a door and go through another door, it is not haram. But she doing that na anaogopa, maybe she might dirtify the masjid, it is haram for her to pass through. Naam. La ilaha illallah. But as we said, this is with a condition. If she's afraid of dirtifying the masjid. And this is not specific to a woman during her periods, in real sense. It's mentioned here. This point is usually mentioned here because we are now talking about her. But this is for anyone who is carrying najasa. Mtu yoyote ambaye anabeba najisi, ni haramu apite kwenye msikiti akiogopa kuwa atachafua msikiti. For example, one is carrying a najasa maybe in a paper bag or something like that. And he's afraid that as he walks through, the paper bag might fall down and dirtifying the masjid, the mosque. It is haram. It is haram for such a person to walk through. Tamam? It is haram for such a person to walk through. Naam. And amongst the things that are haram, also, this is the last thing, amongst the things that are haram is at-tahara biniyati at-ta'abbud or biniyati al-ibadah. A woman should not. It is prohibited for a woman to take a ghusl with the intention of ibadah. If a woman has menstruation, is experiencing her periods, she cannot take wudu or take a bath with the intention of ibadah. Like taking wudu, nawaitul wudu. What is the reason? Like I'm going to pray after the menstrual periods. This is haram. Mwanamke kama huyu hawezi kuoga kwa nia ya ibada na hawezi kuchukua udhu kwa nia ya nini? Kwa nia ya ibada. Except some specific baths. Isipokuwa kuoga siku ya Eid. Because kuoga siku ya Eid ni sunna kwa mwanamke even if she's in her periods. Mwanamke anaruhusiwa kuoga. Pia anaruhusiwa kuoga kwa mfano akiwa yuko hija. When a woman is during her periods anataka kuoga kuingia Maka, because ni sunna mtu akitaka kuingia Maka aoge, akitaka kwenda Arafa ni sunna, vitu kama hivi it is sunna. Hata kama mwanamke ako katika periods zake ni sunna aoge, haina shida. So whatever is haram is wudhu wa kawaida ama kuoga kwa kawaida, apart from these things that we've mentioned. Naam, akhir shay, the last thing that is concerning the woman during her periods is that ile periods ikikatika, mwanamke ambaye yuko katika menstrual periods zake, periods ikikatika, kuna mambo immediately yanakuwa ni halali na kuna mambo ambayo hayakui halali mpaka akishaoga, mpaka akimaliza kufanya nini? Kuoga. Haidh ikikatika inakuwa ni rukhsa afunge, anaweza kufunga. We said that amongst the prohibitions of the things that are prohibited for a woman during her periods is sawm. But if hedhi itakatika kwa mfano kabla ya alfajiri kidogo, mwanamke huyu atafunga, no problem. Hata kama hajaoga, immediately hedhi inakatika, she is permitted to fast. She can fast. And the second thing is at-talaq. The second thing is divorce. Tamam? If a woman's periods zitaisha, the husband has the right, he can divorce her even before she takes a bath. As for the rest of the things that were haram or are haram, as we've mentioned, these things remain haram till she takes a bath. These things remain haram till she takes a bath. Haifai kwa mwanamume kumuingilia, haifai kwa yeye kusoma Qur'ani, haifai kupita msikitini kama tulivyoeleza, mpaka aoge. Mpaka aoge. Naam. And with that we'll have finished the points concerning the woman during her periods. Inshallah, in the next class, we're going to talk about at-tayammum. We're going to talk about the section of tayammum and when to take tayammum, the reasons for tayammum, and how to take tayammum, inshallah. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad, an-Nabiy al-Ummi, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Wallahu a'la wa a'lam.